What if I told you that a plant could grow in your living room that blooms only once every few years, and when it does, it becomes an event your neighbors will discuss for years to come? Don't believe me? Let me tell you a story about a plant that people call a miracle of nature, the curse of flower growers, and a symbol of purity all at once. Today we'll solve one of the strangest puzzles in the botanical world. Because the story of Amorphophallus blooming is not just a story about a flower. It's a story about patience, magic, and science meeting at a single point. So let's start with what seems like a simple question, but has a profound answer. Why does this plant so stubbornly refuse to bloom? Imagine a gardener who grows an Amorphophallus for 2, 3, maybe even 5 years. He waters it. He provides proper lighting. He tends to temperature, humidity, and fertilizing. Years pass one after another. His friends grow orchids that bloom annually. Geraniums on the balcony bring joy with their flowers. Even difficult plants considered temperamental bloom beautifully in the hands of an experienced grower. But his Amorphophallus? Nothing. Just enormous leaves. Leaves and more leaves. And at some point, the gardener begins to think, maybe something's wrong with it? Maybe I'm doing something incorrectly? Maybe it's impossible after all? This is precisely when most people give up. But those who stay, those who continue to believe, one day wake up and see it. A strange stalk appears at the top of the plant. It grows hour after hour. And then, in one night or one day, an inflorescence unfolds that looks like it was drawn by an artist from some surrealist film. Fleshy, dense, almost frighteningly beautiful. And then the gardener understands. The wait was worth it. But why? Why does nature make us wait so long? In fact, in the wild, Amorphophallus blooms every year. Every year in the forests of Indonesia, on the island of Sumatra, where this plant has lived for millions of years, these strange, powerful inflorescences appear. But at home, in apartments, in greenhouses, that's where the real mystery begins. You see, we're used to thinking that if we create the right conditions, proper temperature, humidity, and light, the plant will bloom. But Amorphophallus is not an ordinary plant. It's a philosopher plant. It follows its own rules. According to the traditions of Indonesian peoples who have grown this plant for centuries, Amorphophallus blooming is not simply a biological process. It's a moment when the plant is ready to share its energy with the world. In some cultures, it's believed that the rare blooming of this plant is a sign that it's building internal strength, meditating, waiting for the right moment. There's a belief that if your Amorphophallus blooms, it's a sign of good fortune, a symbol that you're worthy of receiving nature's blessing. Interesting, isn't it? But now let's look at this through the lens of science. Here's what actually happens inside the plant. Amorphophallus is a tuberous plant. Its power is concentrated in an enormous underground tuber that can weigh several kilograms. Each year, the plant invests energy either in leaf growth or blooming. This is an economic decision at a biological level. In nature, on the island of Sumatra, the climate is stable. The seasons are less contrasting than in temperate zones. The plant has certain triggers for blooming. These could be seasonal changes in day length, a specific temperature sequence, the level of energy accumulated in the tuber. All these factors work in harmony. At home, however, we often provide the plant with comfort year-round. Stable temperature, consistent lighting, humidity that we regulate. And in this stable, comfortable world, the plant loses the necessary signal. It sees no reason to bloom. Why spend precious energy on reproduction if life is safe and predictable? This is why many gardeners achieve blooming by creating harsher conditions. A dormant period with lower temperature and humidity. This is an imitation of a dry season that the plant recognizes instinctively. Here, science and tradition meet at the most interesting point. When old gardeners said the plant must mature, that it must feel strong, they were right. They simply didn't know the scientific terms. But the essence was correct. The plant really must accumulate enough resources. It really must go through a period of stress that will activate its reproductive instincts. This is not magic, but it resembles magic. Because the invisible processes happening inside the plant at the cellular level follow rhythms that the plant carries with it from its ancient homeland. Now let's delve into the history of this unusual plant. Because Amorphophallus is not just a modern houseplant. This plant has a history that goes back centuries. The island of Sumatra is a place where nature created a true paradise for botanists. Humid tropical forests, perennial temperatures, abundant rainfall. Here, in these forests, Amorphophallus evolved over millions of years. The plant perfectly adapted to its habitat. Its enormous leaves are the result of competition for light in the dense forest canopy. Its powerful tuber is an energy accumulator that allows the plant to survive dry periods. The indigenous peoples of Indonesia knew about this plant long before Europeans ever heard of its existence. According to tradition, the plant was used not only as decoration but also in various cultural practices. In some regions, the Amorphophallus flower is believed to be connected with spiritual awakening, with the moment when Earth connects with heaven. Europeans first encountered this plant only in the 19th century, during active colonization and intensive flora exchange between continents. Botanists were amazed. They saw a gigantic inflorescence resembling an infernal organ in a Catholic cathedral. This inflorescence looked so strange, so alien, that the first scientists describing it couldn't find words in their native language. The name Amorphophallus comes from Greek words meaning shapeless phallus. This wasn't a very delicate description, but it reflected the true feeling people experienced when seeing this plant. Interestingly, when Amorphophallus first arrived in European greenhouses, no one could make it bloom. Years passed. The plant grew and developed, but produced no inflorescences. European gardeners were puzzled. They possessed all the technology, all the knowledge, but this temperamental tropical inhabitant refused to obey their conditions. It was humbling. Nature cannot be simply ordered, cannot be forced. It must be understood. Over time, experienced gardeners understood the secret. They began experimenting with dormant periods, humidity, and temperature. And gradually, one greenhouse at a time, one specimen at a time, Amorphophallus began to bloom in captivity. But gardeners made a mistake. They shared the information, creating hope. And that hope spread across the world. People began growing Amorphophallus in their homes, believing they could repeat the success of botanical gardens. Many failed, and many continue to fail to this day. In Eastern cultures, Amorphophallus took on a completely different place. In Thailand and other Southeast Asian countries, there's an ancient belief that the Amorphophallus flower can predict the future. It's believed that when the plant prepares to bloom, it senses upcoming changes in its owner's life. Some people wait for their plant to bloom as a sign that it's time to make an important decision or begin a new chapter. In India, where Amorphophallus also occurs in its wild state, there's a belief that rare blooming is a blessing from the goddess of plants. People say that if your plant blooms, it means you've received her approval to start a new business or move. Western culture, of course, approached this more skeptically. For Western gardeners, Amorphophallus was simply a challenge. It was a plant that needed to be conquered through science and patience. Now let's return to science, because something truly fascinating happens here. When botanists began studying the biochemistry of Amorphophallus blooming, they discovered something astounding. The plant uses a sophisticated signaling system to determine if it's ready to bloom. It's not simply energy accumulation. It's an entire orchestra of intracellular processes. First, the tuber must reach a certain size. This can take 3, 4, sometimes even 7 or 8 years. Weight matters. Literally. The plant essentially weighs itself and asks, am I strong enough? Am I ready to spend energy on reproduction? Then comes the dormant period. This is critical. During dormancy, complex biochemical processes occur in the tuber. Plant hormone levels change. ABA, abscisic acid, circulates in the tuber, preparing it for awakening. It's as if the plant enters deep sleep during which its brain is reformatted. When conditions become favorable, usually this is a temperature increase and renewed watering after the dormant period, there's a surge of auxins and gibberellins in the tuber. These growth hormones signal time to wake up, time to act. If the plant decides to bloom instead of producing leaves, it directs energy to the flowering stalk. This stalk can grow half a meter in just a few days. This is one of the fastest growing structures in the plant kingdom. And when the stalk reaches its height, the inflorescence unfolds. This is not a flower in the classical sense. It's a complex structure called a spadix, surrounded by a dense spatha. Inside this spadix are thousands of tiny flowers. Some are male, others are female. But what truly astounds scientists, this structure produces heat. During blooming, the Amorphophallus inflorescence can be 10 to 15 degrees warmer than the surrounding environment. The plant literally warms its own flower. Why? To attract pollinators. In the native Sumatra forests, this plant is pollinated by flies attracted by its scent and heat. And speaking of scent, that's another story entirely. The Amorphophallus inflorescence emits a smell described as a combination of rotting meat, old shoes, and something even more repulsive. This is not an error. This is strategy. This is the scent that attracts scavengers. Flies, beetles that normally lay eggs on corpses. The plant uses their instinct against them, deceiving them into pollinating the flower instead of laying eggs. Nature is cruel and brilliant simultaneously. Now, if you want to see this wonder in your home, here's what you need to know. First, arm yourself with patience. Young plants may not bloom for 5 to 7 years, even under ideal conditions. This is normal. A mature plant is an investment of time. Second, provide a dormant period. When your plant retreats, when the leaf dies, don't rush. Leave the tuber in a cool place, approximately 15 to 18 degrees, with minimal watering for 2 to 3 months. This is critical. This is the signal that tells the plant, it's time to act. Without this dormant period, blooming is almost impossible. Third, after the dormant period, gradually resume watering and increase temperature. This awakening should be slow and natural. Don't jump from cold straight into heat. The plant should wake gradually, like a person emerging from winter hibernation. Fourth, feed it properly. When the plant comes out of dormancy and begins to grow, fertilizers high in potassium will help accumulate energy in the tuber. Potassium strengthens plant tissues and helps it accumulate sufficient resources for blooming. Fifth, provide sufficient light. Leaves should grow strong and healthy. The larger the leaf area, the more energy the plant can accumulate through photosynthesis. This is a direct relationship. Sixth, be careful with fluctuations. Sudden changes in conditions can frighten the plant, make it think bad times are coming. Stability, then controlled changes, that's what's needed. And seventh, don't worry if it takes time. Because when it happens, when one day you walk into the room and see that your plant is unfolding one of the strangest and most beautiful inflorescences in the world, you'll understand. You'll understand why people wait for years. Why this plant became a legend. Why it's called the most regal of all houseplants. Because Amorphophallus doesn't give its blooming away for free. It earns it, and so do we. Maybe that's where the real magic lies. Not in the flower itself, but in the journey toward it. In the waiting that teaches us patience. In understanding that the best things in life, whether in nature or in our own lives, require time, care, and faith. Because that's how we grow. Like Amorphophallus. Slowly, unpredictably, but steadily. And when the moment finally comes, our moment of blooming, when we unfold what we've accumulated within ourselves, it becomes an event worthy of the wait. Amorphophallus reminds us of this every year, as we care for it, not knowing if it will ever bloom. And that's precisely why this plant deserves to be loved. If you enjoyed this story, if you've ever grown Amorphophallus or wish to start, write about it in the comments. I want to hear your stories, your victories, and your waiting. Has anyone here already witnessed the blooming of this miracle? Tell us how you achieved it. Like if you believe in the power of patience. If you believe that the best things require waiting. And subscribe to the channel, because there are many more stories ahead about plants worth listening to. I'll tell you about long-lived plants, about flowers with forgotten histories, about green beings that teach us about life. Until next time, care for your plants. Wait for their blooming. And remember, in nature there is no hurry, only time and patience.